Hey everybody, back again with chapters 2 and 9 from Coleman and Kerbo. We're kind of mixing things up a little bit here, taking two chapters that are not right next to each other in the book. We're going to be looking at changes in the family as well as the aging and the elderly in this society, because those two issues tend to go hand in hand in many ways. So we're going to talk about what is a family. What is a family in the sociological perspective? How have families been defined historically? What are varieties of families? What has been sort of the perception of the perfect or modern American family of the mother and the father and the 2.3 kids, the house, the dog, and all that kind of stuff? Much of that, as you'll see in the readings and when you get into my notes, is really a myth. We have never really had that Ozzie and Harriet, Leave It to Beaver kind of perfect American family, that you might see on TV land or hear about from the 1950s and things like that. The family has never really been like that. That was just an ideal that happened to come out of popular culture back in the 1950s, and then, got sort of misunderstood and made fun of in the 1960s and 70s, and then there was this return to this idea of the perfect American family in the 1980s and the early 90s, and now here we are, into the 2000 teens, I guess, and we don't know where we are with the family. There are so many different perspectives on this that we got to take idealism and kind of just set it aside for a moment and take a look at what are the definitions of families. Scientifically, statistically, what are the things that we understand about the ways that people interact, that have a family, what families' rights are, what family values are according to different types of families and things like that. So there's a lot that we have seen that is sort of a mythology of the American family over time, but much of that has changed drastically since that myth was sort of cultivated a few decades back. So you'll want to take a look at that in the readings. Make sure you cover that in my notes as well, because I've got a few additional thoughts and additional bits of information in there when we talk about the family. We're also going to take a look at reproductive freedom and how that has changed over the years. Now let's put the politics of this aside once again and put Roe versus Wade and the idea of pro-life versus pro-choice and things like that. Put that aside and let's just take a look at the history of reproductive freedom and what that has meant for different people at different times over the course of history, especially since this has really made its way into the national consciousness, starting in the late 50s and into the 60s, and then with Supreme Court case in the 1970s, and then all the politics since then. Put the politics aside and let's just look at the history for this one, and then we'll have an opportunity to talk about that some more in the discussion forum. We'll take a look at domestic violence and how the definition of domestic violence, the understanding of domestic violence, has changed over the years. Again, think back to the very first week of the course when we talked about a social problem being something that is not only a problem that exists for lots of people, but also something that is recognized as being a social problem, because domestic violence is one of those things that was not always recognized as a social problem. It was often thought of as just a private or family matter. And not just in recent American history, but going way back to immigrant groups before this was even a country, to the Europeans who came over here and founded what we know of today as the American country and society. So the idea, the concepts between domestic violence has been around for centuries, but it's only recently that we've started to actually talk about it as a problem that, sort of needs to be taken out of the shadows and brought out into the daylight and discussed. And what does that mean for both women and men in a family, as well as for children in that family? Then we're going to shift gears a little bit, talk about the aging and the elderly, talk about aging as a concept, the life cycle. What does it mean to act your age exactly? And then what does it mean when you become elderly? How does that life cycle evolve and change as you become older? What does it mean for you as an individual? What does it mean for the elderly as a group? Because we've got a tremendous shift going on right now in the American population. The baby boomers, which you may have heard of, hopefully you've heard of, that's the population that was born generally in those 20 years or so following the end of World War II. That was the baby boom, that generation. And most of those folks are retiring now. Most of those folks are entering the age of Social Security now, and entering the age where they're going to have more significant health problems now. And so what does it mean for us as a society when you kind of take this average age and skew it to where our average age is considerably higher, more old, more aged than it has been in the past? What does that mean for our social institutions? What does that mean for our economy, for our government, for public policy? Lots of things to consider there when we look at the elderly and the issues that they face in this country. So take a look at those issues. Again, make sure you take a look at my notes as well as the chapter. We have a quiz, and then we're going to have a discussion forum, and I think it's going to be pretty interesting this week. So I'll see you there.